everyone, and welcome along to the TII post-match reaction to Rangers 3, Motherwell 0. My name is Craig Dennett, and I hope you all had a great Christmas, however you spent it, whether it was with friends, family, or anyone in between. As I said, my name is Craig Dennett, and I'm your host this evening as we look back on Rangers' first post-Christmas game at Ibrox tonight. Ran out 3-0 winners against Motherwell, but it wasn't the most comfortable performance or the best performance, shall we say, that we will ever see from Rangers. I'm joined tonight, as I was in the car to and from the game, by Kyle McLean. How you doing, Kyle?
Absolutely sick of you, to be honest. I don't know how much more we can talk about this game, to be honest, but we're going to give it another go,
Yeah, there was a lot of weird kind of stuff went on in the game tonight, so we'll delve into that one. Kyle, the headline is obviously Rangers 3, Motherwell 0, 3 points, a clean sheet, 4 wins out of 4 under Michael Beale so far. What's your overall feeling on the game before we delve into the finer details?
Just as you said, I mean, we talked about it loads. I mean, it was such a weird game. Like I didn't really know how to feel about it when we were walking down the steps from the club deck. I was, even though we were in the end quite comfortable, 3-0 victors in that game, a couple of chances cleared off the line, a couple of other good goal attempts. I still felt almost disappointed in how slack some of the play was. I don't want to say a lack of effort, but just a lack of awareness, lack of perception at times. But it was an odd game, wasn't it?
It definitely was. Let's start to look into it, I guess, and start where we always do with the starting lineup that Rangers put out. So it was Alan McGregor in goals, James Tavernier right back, centre back partnership of Connor Goldson and Ben Davies, with Borna Barisic returning at left back. We'll give him a few mentions, no doubt, as we go through the game. The midfield three changed once again. John Lundstrom and Ryan Jack joined this time by Alex Lowry, who was freed. I guess I saw some people suggesting he was freed from prison in the build-up to the game. But he was making his first start for quite a considerable length of time, and obviously good to see him back after that horror tackle that took place in the Cup. Outside of that, it was just onto the front three, where Malik Tillman, Alfredo Morelos, and Ryan Kent made up the remainder of the starting 11. Kyle, just give us your reaction, or what your reaction was to that upon hearing it.
Yeah, not too many great surprises. I think at this moment in time on paper, you and I had the discussion sitting there when we found out what the team was at this. Perhaps, maybe on paper, arguably our best squad. Maybe you could argue one or two. Was I surprised to see Barisic going in? Not really. I think that was proven to be the correct choice, as I'm sure we'll come on to. But it was harsh and divine given how well he's played the previous 3 games. But he's not a left back, and well, he came on and he got his just rewards. But no great surprises. Maybe could have seen Kamara in there. For Lundstrom, I think that was maybe the only other change that we maybe thought could have happened, but no great surprises, and just as it sort of lined up the last game as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Borna Barisic coming back into the starting lineup was almost a given, especially with their defensive issues, I would suggest, or potentially our left back issues in terms of not having a fit left back. So despite him having one training session since he came back, I think it was a given that Borna Barisic would return. Outside of that, I was interested to see how they positioned Alex Lowry. I actually thought, rather than being part of the midfield three, Alex Lowry would have been on the right of the front three. So I thought it was interesting that was where Michael Beale positioned them. After the game, Michael Beale suggested that he's actually moving Malik Tillman around in the starting 11 to try and find his best position, which is interesting, and I guess suggests why Alex Lowry was moved into the attacking, the more attacking of the midfield three. Not quite sure that worked, if I'm being honest. We can come on to Alex Lowry's performance as we go through the game. Outside of that, I think it was pretty much to be expected, and as you said, I think it's pretty close to, if not our strongest starting 11 that we would that we put forward. I'd be interested in the listeners' views on that one as well, and we can bring a few of them up on the screen and discuss that. If there's anywhere else you think that potentially we would be stronger if an injured player or someone else in the squad was in. I think the only one we discussed, Kyle, was Tom Lawrence, who we thought potentially would come into the midfield three in place of Alex Lowry and create a stronger starting 11. But outside of that, I think we're pretty close there, albeit we're waiting on some getting up to fitness, and I guess we were all able to see the lack of cohesion in the performance despite the good result. Kyle, first 10 minutes of the game, I'm not even sure how to describe the first 10 minutes of the game. I think we conceded 4 corners to Motherwell, if I'm correct, and we got a mile off it, didn't we?
Yeah, it was not a great start to the game. If I remember something that had been levelled at Gerrard quite a lot, the team wasn't great at starting games, and it seemed to be repeating itself a wee bit here. There was far too many corners given away. I am sure we will use this word several times tonight, but it was so slack. I mean, it's take your pick. McGregor just didn't look confident. There was a ball. I think he punched at it rather than catching it. There was another one where he let go right along the 6-yard box as well, where you possibly expect him to do a wee bit better. That caused a bit of panic amongst the defence. Ben Davies, who again I'm sure we'll discuss in a bit more detail, there was just so many slack passes. There was passes going right out the pitch. It's something I've never seen from a Rangers team, especially in the last few performances. It's just passes, just absolutely nowhere near finding somebody. And I do get what Michael Beale's saying in terms of we are very much a work in progress, but I genuinely, especially in that first 10 minutes before we got the goal, I would have expected the passing to be a wee bit better. It didn't help with you going, if we do that on Monday against Celtic, we won't get away with that. But I think that just compiled it and made it worse for watching. But yeah, that first 10 minutes was just simply nowhere near of an acceptable Rangers standard and how to start a game against, and no offence to them, against a team like Motherwell.
Yeah, I think I turned up to tonight's game, given the performances against Hibs, Aberdeen, Ross County, expecting us to show something and to start to show a bit of the cohesion that Michael Beale says we're still lacking in terms of, I guess, to see signs of something that's coming together. We spoke during the game about we can see what we're trying to do as a team, but the players just aren't getting there yet. We need them to get there, I think, is the thing. We need them to get there sooner rather than later, and I was hoping today was going to be the day that we do see them getting there. Unfortunately, it wasn't, and we'll come on to a few potential reasons why that might be. But I think the most important thing was the 3 points today. The fact that we scored 3 really high-quality goals, I think, as well, was a real positive. But there's a lot of work to be done during the next few days to get us ready to play against Celtic. And I'm not sure if most fans were the same, but I was viewing it very much through what are we going to do against Celtic, and how are these players going to perform? Is this going to be the starting lineup against Celtic? And I was very much through the lens of we need to start showing what we can do ahead of that game as well, because it's a boom or bust game for us, I guess, on Monday, and that was very much why I was keen to see a performance from Rangers. Kyle, we'll talk about the first goal. Very much as our fellow host Ross Chalmers says here, first goal was against the run of play. Let's be honest, great ball from Borna. It very much was against the run of play. John Winston and Ryan Jack were not getting a hold of that midfield at all. They were not taking control of it in any way. Our passing seemed to be a bit back and forward across the defence. We didn't really seem to have much invention or creativity. Ball, Ryan Kent does well in the midfield, goes as his man, passes to Alex Lowry, who passes it further on to Borna Barisic. So a trademark Borna Barisic deep lying cross. When it was flying into the box, I was half expecting Liam Kelly to come out and grab it, but he didn't. It was absolutely perfectly positioned, and Alfredo Morelos made absolutely no mistake, towering above the defender and finding the roof of the net. It was a great goal, but definitely against the run of play.
Yeah, it definitely was against the run of play, and you can see that's exactly why Beale's got him in the squad. I think he's alluded to in previous pressers that he's going to use people's strengths and I know it's a bit of a cliched phrase, but Barisic has that absolute wand of a left foot. It was a brilliant ball. If I remember on the radio, was it Lamy, the defender, that kind of got caught a wee bit underneath it? I just think the ball's that good that it's almost impossible to defend. Kelly, who's we had an interesting discussion about goalkeepers tonight, who's potentially the new Scotland #1, Liam Kelly, but he was, yeah, could he be doing better for that? Maybe, but the ball was just so good. It was right in that corridor of uncertainty where Alfredo Morelos just has to get a touch on it, and it was a really, really good finish, and it was great to see him back in the score sheet again, especially before such a big game, and name one person in Ibrox that wasn't happy when you see Alfredo sliding over into that corner.
Absolutely, and it was much needed I think to just settle the nerves, because the performance in that opening 10 minutes definitely wasn't helping that with the fans. Michael Beale spoke on the radio about he thought it was a bit of a muted atmosphere tonight. I don't think it was any different to a normal run-of-the-mill league game yourself, Kyle.
Yeah, I'm the same with you there. I disagree. For the first time, I disagree with Beale's comments in terms of it was a muted atmosphere. We as supporters largely react to what's happening in the pitch, and that opening up to the goal, it wasn't good enough at times. I mean, you can't. We're not going to be cheering if there's players that are passing the ball straight out the pitch or making slack passes or just not. I've noticed a lot of comments about Lundstrom already. That infuriated me at points again, how slack he was just giving the ball away. And it's not the first time we've seen him do it. It's a few times at the Ross County game I seem to remember doing it as well, where he lost it and he just instantly fouled the man. You know, it's almost petulant, and we as supporters, that's not what we want to see. If you're going to sit and talk about, you're going to bring, and it's not just about the results, you're going to bring a brand of football. It's 4 games. As a Rangers manager, I hesitate to say it, but after the Old Firm on Monday, I think the honeymoon period will be over for Michael Beale, and we should be expecting to see not only results, but a bit more of, what's the word I'm looking for, cohesion in the performances, Craig.
Absolutely, and we'll come on to talk about John Lundstrom in just a second. Before we do, I want to bring up this comment from Curry Muncher, who's obviously trying to buy a microphone from Ross or something along those kind of lines. He's asking why Ross is not on the pod. Well, Ross is not on the pod because he's lazy. That's all we can say. He's just lazy. He didn't even make it to the game tonight. He's using the excuse of a holiday tomorrow. Yeah. I just think, he's just needs to do better, needs to work harder. I think is the summary of that for Ross. Kyle, I guess we hoped after the goal that we would start to settle into the game, that we would be able to take control. I mentioned earlier that John Lundstrom and Ryan Jack weren't taking control of the game in midfield, and we really needed them to do that. They really struggled even after we went 1-0 up to do that. I felt like John Lundstrom was very much slowing down our play. I felt like he was in the right positions to take the ball, but he was taking too long to make the decisions on where he was going to pass it. He was taking too long to actually make that pass, and he seemed to be hesitating as well at times, which I think was actually something that was kind of running through the full team. It almost looked like they were lacking confidence on the ball, that the player they wanted to pass to was actually going to be where they wanted to pass it to. Why do you think we struggled with that tonight?
God, it's a difficult question to answer, that one. I mean, you and I clocked it, 25, 30 minutes. There was Ben Davies was at it, was hesitating when he was going to make challenges, when he was going for passing the ball. Lundstrom was at it, Jack was at it a couple of times as well. Some of the forward play as well, there was a wee bit of hesitancy. I honestly don't know. I don't know if they're still trying to come to terms with the system that they've been asked to play. The thing about tonight is we were taking a lot more risks, I think, than what we've seen us do under the previous regime. Under Gio, it was all very safe. It was measured. It was composed with no real results. I don't know if there's still a bit of that still needs to be worked out the players a wee bit in terms of they do need to have a bit of confidence in saying that if we go for this pass, it will work and hopefully we go on to create an attack and move out of it or get us out of a difficult situation. But I honestly don't know. I don't know if it's just it's still a confidence thing at the moment. But how can you say we're not confident if that's four victories in the trot? I think that'll be 3 out of 4 games. They've now scored 3 goals under Michael Beale. That didn't happen under the previous regime as well. So I don't know is the honest answer, Craig. I wish I knew, but it's something that needs to stop quickly, and just the players just need to have a wee bit more belief in themselves.
Yeah, what do you make of John Lundstrom, I guess, so far this season? Not necessarily just tonight, although I think tonight was symptomatic of much of what we've seen from John Lundstrom so far this season. It just seems to have fallen back, I guess, to his early season form from last season. I think I was one of the most vocal critics early last season and was completely proven wrong in the second half of the season as to what impact John Lundstrom can have for us as a team and the value that he provided in that system that he was playing. And obviously he was vital in that way in that run to Seville. So we all know how good John Lundstrom can be. I think a lot of us considered maybe he struggled because of how the team were playing under Giovanni Van Bronckhorst at the start of this season. But it doesn't seem to be that. It seems to be his performances seem to have regressed. He still wants to take control in some situations, but he also is slow to react when he loses the ball. He's slow to close down players and tackles. When he does get to the opposition player in time, he tends to be quite rash and diving in. We've seen him pick up loads of needless yellow cards. He got another one tonight because him and Jack were dilly-dallying on the ball. It just doesn't seem to be, I guess, the dynamic midfielder that we need him to be in that position. And I think he's at serious risk of losing his position going forward. We saw James Sands come on for him for the last half hour. Today, I think he was much more progressive and much more forward-thinking than John Lundstrom has been. And John Lundstrom likes to go from side to side when he's controlling the play, whereas James Sands was much more incisive in that sort of number 6 role in there. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think John Lundstrom's at risk of losing his spot?
Yeah, possibly. I think he's maybe a wee bit fortunate that I don't like saying it like this, but maybe a wee bit fortunate that Davis is injured at the moment in terms of finding him in, because I think maybe we might have seen Stephen Davis starting this game. I agree with Curry Muncher to an extent there, but it's been picked up more and more. He just, as you alluded to, he slows it down a wee bit. There's that I hate keep going back to last season, but it was that 6 months towards the end of last season that the word I would associate with Lundstrom was he was tenacious and he was diving into tackles and he was snapping the ball and it was getting absolutely fired at people at like 100 miles an hour, and there was a real bite to his game. He was that bit of a a bit of a midfield general. I don't know if he's been told to tone it down a bit or what, but it seems to be that some players in this system the shackles have been taken off, and there's other players the shackles seem to have been put back on him, and Lundstrom is very much one of those players. I mean, you saw him for Sheffield United, in the Premier League, and it was that box to box midfielders. We didn't really see him outside the box an awful lot. I think he maybe had one shot, which ended up being deflected for a corner. But I don't know. There just seems to be a bit of a lack of confidence at the moment, which is given how good we've seen him play, he seems like an ideal player to have sitting in that defensive midfield role, getting box to box, but it's just not happening at the moment. As I said, he's not the worst offender or anything like that. Just tonight he happened to have a particularly bad game, and I think it was the correct decision to take him off when he ended up getting taken off. But yeah, it's hopefully it gets better soon.
Yeah, Albert's 11 Legends saying there he thinks Lundstrom is still basically injured at the moment. If that's the case, I'm not really sure why he keeps being played. We've got the likes of Glenn Kamara who can slot in there. James Sands, as we saw, came on there tonight to play in that position. So if John Lundstrom is injured, I don't know if they're trying to just get him through to the Old Firm game. But if that's the case, then sure, you rest him tonight, so he's definitely ready for the Old Firm game. So I'm not sure that one kind of makes sense to me. Kyle, it felt like we were creating some half chances, but struggling really to get ourselves through on goal or to create any clear cut chances. I believe Alfredo Morelos had one. There were a couple of crosses thrown into the box that ended up with headers on target, or I think there was a couple that actually came off people's knees and things like that. The keeper had to make a save. There wasn't anything obvious from that perspective, and Motherwell were continuing to push at the other end. I felt like we still looked nervy at the back. I'm not sure if you had the same feeling. I felt like despite having James Tavernier, Connor Goldson, Ben Davies, and Borna Barisic, which a lot of us are probably thinking pretty close to our first choice back four, maybe Yilmaz coming in at left back. But outside of that, that's pretty much our first choice back four. And we looked at sixes and sevens at times and how to defend the Motherwell attack. Motherwell were pressing us really high, which I think was forcing us into decisions. Alan McGregor still does not look comfortable with the ball at his feet. And he seems to, we spoke about hesitation earlier amongst the outfield players. Again, he was hesitating a few times in his decision making, whether it was coming for crosses, whether it was catching the ball instead of punching the ball, whether it was playing the ball out quickly when he caught it or had the ball at his feet. He just looked indecisive, I think is probably the best way to describe it. What's your thoughts on the back four and why they might have appeared a little out of sorts? It just seemed a bit strange.
Again, I'm not too sure. It'll be interesting to see how often that back four, back five has actually played with each other this season, given the injuries, especially to the centre halves. For me, it all started with McGregor just not being confident, and then that seemed to sort of knock on to Ben Davies a wee bit. I thought Goldson was all right in terms of defensive. I thought maybe Tav had a couple of slack ones. I know I was on the last podcast before we signed off for the Christmas break, giving Borna Barisic a bit of stick in terms of his confidence and his attitude at times. I think his comments saying he was tired and exhausted after the World Cup, I think that was really poor and something he shouldn't have said. But in saying that, I think he has been one of our most consistent performers this year. I thought he was okay. It comes down to confidence and confidence only. That is the only way you can say it. There was just a lack of belief, and I don't really know why. I'm glad Ben Davies for me did come into it a bit more as the game progressed. He seemed to find his range, but you know, as much as we're criticising some of our own players, sometimes you just have to stand up. It was something that was very noticeable was the Motherwell high press. I thought Stevie Hamill got his tactics spot on in that regard. They put us under pressure at times. Again, maybe something or definitely something that we will come to expect on Monday for sure. But yeah, we just didn't really seem to cope well with how in our faces they were at times, and we just a wee bit of panic rather than just a bit of composure and just finding that out ball or trying to break the lines and find it through the midfield. We did get there eventually, but it took far too long.
I absolutely did. I have to agree with Curry Muncher here. The lack of composure is worrying me, especially in defence. We always look like a nervous wreck and panicking, like watching Wayne's football, where they all run towards the ball. I think that's partly true. I think I've no idea what just happened to Kyle's right hand side there.
Being a dog barking, that's all.
I have to agree with that one. It seems strange. Even our fullbacks seem reticent to go out and close down a cross ball for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why. That seems a bit strange. They seem to want to leave it to each other to deal with certain things, and absolutely that needs to change, and we need those players to step up and take responsibility. One player who did step up and take responsibility was Connor Goldson. I think it was around the 35-minute mark. I said to Kyle it'd be great to get a second goal before half time, as Borna Barisic steps up to whip in another great ball from the corner. Connor Goldson rises and manages to find the back of the net, I think off the crossbar and in, but it was up the other end of the park from us, but I think off the crossbar and in. And a rare Connor Goldson goal, but a very much welcome one, Kyle.
100%. It was a well worked corner in terms of, I thought the delivery was excellent from Barisic. I initially think, I can't remember, was it Tav was over that side or maybe it was Tillman sort of hovering about the corners. Something that we saw, noticed a lot tonight was how quickly Tillman was as soon as we got a corner, Tillman was over in there either trying to look for a quick corner or I think we did it once. I don't know if that's something he's picked up at or been taught or trained at Bayern Munich, but Barisic went over and was instantly wanting to take it, which was good to see. A confident Barisic, you're always happy about that. He gets that lovely sort of whip in, and it's a criticism of Rangers the last few months is how we've had sort of two giant centre halves in Ben Davies and Connor Goldson when they have been fit. You should expect these guys to be getting on the end of corners, and thankfully Goldson, as you've seen him do in the past quite a few times, managed to get his head on the end of it, and it was a great towering header, too powerful for the goalkeeper. And yeah, again, almost a bit surprised at 35 minutes that we were 2-0 up, given how, not poorly, but how just disjointed the performance was.
Yeah, absolutely. Curry Muncher's clarifying it for us. So apparently Connor Goldson headed it into the Motherwell player's shoulder and it whipped over the keeper, which makes more sense as to how the ball went in at the back of the net. We were a bit confused as to how it wasn't saved, but that makes much more sense, and we'll take all the luck we can get on that front. As you said, it was a very disjointed performance up until this stage. We went into the break 2-0 up. I was a bit surprised but happy that we managed to reach that stage 2-0 up, and when you get 2 goals ahead, I know Motherwell have clawed us back a couple of times in recent seasons when we've been 2 goals ahead, but I was pretty confident and comfortable that we would be able to see the game out as a victory, but I was definitely expecting more goals, Kyle, and I was expecting us to continue to push forward. Second half started, and it did seem a bit that we were more in command and more in control. For the first 5 minutes or so, we had a few corners, we had a few shots at goal, we had a few attempts. Alfredo Morelos was looking dangerous again at the start of the second half. And then we just seemed to lapse back into the disjointed performance again. We lost control of any passing. We were playing the safe pass quite a lot. We were turning backwards, even though there was space going forwards. We were second guessing where our other players were. We were hitting the ball straight out the park. It was just the same as the first half all over again, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, it kind of crept in out of nowhere again. As you said, the first 5 minutes of that half were encouraging. Lowry in particular seemed to be a bit more snappy with his passing. He had some lovely one-touch stuff and seemed to be acting as the wall or forming a few of the sort of triangles that we see under Beale. But yeah, I don't know if it was something that Motherwell did that slightly changed. At times because this is the Lundstrom incident that we're talking about when he got the yellow card. It all seemed to go, I don't want to say tits up, but it just seemed to go from going quite well to a bit nah after that wee incident. It's just, I don't know if some of the players at that point had thought that, and I'd be really, really disappointed if they did, if they thought that we're 2-0 up. Motherwell haven't really had much in the way of chances at goal. I don't know if they just took the foot off the gas a wee bit, or as I said, we know the Old Firm's coming up in a few days' time. I don't know if some of the players started looking towards that, but because I said this to you when we were leaving, I felt at times that, and this is a really difficult thing to say, that there was a wee bit of unprofessionalism crept in terms of we just weren't, seeing it out, or at times giving Motherwell the respect that we were due. I mean, I think that's the most frustrating things from a fan's perspective, is that we know that more players in this team have more gears to go through, and I keep saying it. It was such a weird game. See, if we'd have won that game 6-0 tonight, nobody would have batted an eyelid. But it was, it was just an odd performance until the changes happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Our fellow podder Chris Cherry, we aren't in full flow yet, but we do look much more solid and controlling under Beale. I think this is something we've discussed quite a bit. Kyle, we can see what Michael Beale wants us to do. We can see what the players are trying to do. They're just not quite executing it as yet. And sadly, tonight was another performance that showed that. And it does feel like it needs to click very quickly over the next few days if we're going to have any chance against Celtic in the Old Firm game on Monday.
Yeah, 100%. It was that was the thing under Gio. You could never quite see what we were trying to do. You were always like, what? I mean, I don't know how many times you or I were on a pod, and we were going, what was the tactics? Like, how were we actually meant to be getting at that team from this game? At least with this Beale way of saying playing, you can see what the goal is, what the end aim is. You could see how we were trying to do things. It was just, they just weren't. I totally agree with Chris there in terms of they just weren't quite happening. I think we were in, control's the word. I honestly don't think we were fully in control of that game at points, especially the centre of the park, the midfield. Motherwell didn't have control of it. We absolutely didn't have control of it in the middle of the park, and that for me is something that needs to improve quickly. But I can't remember, was it maybe the pre-match game for this, or the pre-match press conference for this, Beale did say that when they were discussing the Davis injury, that we are. It sounds like we're looking at central midfielders anyway, which is encouraging from a supporter's point of view.
Definitely. One player that was playing central midfield tonight, Kyle, was Alex Lowry. He was one of the substitutes that came off after the third goal. We'll come on to the third goal in a second. Albert's 11 Legends says, think Lowry needs a run of games, but unfortunately will be benched again on Monday. I would fully expect Alex Lowry to be back on the bench on Monday, not reflective of his performance tonight, but I think just in terms of how we're going to approach trying to play against Celtic. What did you make of Alex Lowry tonight, and how did you think he fared against Motherwell?
Yeah, I thought he was okay. He's not going to escape a wee bit of criticism in terms of some of his slackness, some of his passes. But it's the thing with like Lowry that you will get if he does something that's not quite right, or he loses the ball, it's not going to deter him. He's going to try it again. There was one instance, especially in the first half, and I'm sure we've seen him score a goal like this before, when he got like a really, really quick shot away. I almost thought it was a sort of toe poke, but I think he's just got that quick feet that he can get it away. Some of his touches were just absolutely class. See when he's not thinking about things, and he's in those wee triangles, I can really, really see him being a key part of the Beale system in terms of building the play up and working it forward. he just looked like a guy that's got a wee bit of rustiness. I'm really glad he got 60 minutes today, and I have no doubt he will be an important part of this season and next season as well. But at the moment, it's just about getting in minutes in the guy's legs, getting him up to match sharpness, and I'm sure at the end of the day he'll be an excellent player for us.
Yeah, he will be, and I have no doubt that Alex Lowry is you're laughing at Curry once you're giving your painting stick there, so Curry's been firing into. I'm not even sure. Is it cats? Is it cats on your painting, or is it?
Listen, it's absolutely not. It's whatever you want it to be, Curry. That's what I'll say.
I have no doubts that Alex Lowry will be a part of the first team squad at Rangers. I have no doubts that Alex Lowry will make his way into the first team starting 11, and he will make a real impact for us. You can see his quality. I think the only thing that's kind of been brought into question, especially in recent weeks and months, has been his attitude in training. That seems to have been something that's been brought forward quite a few times and by quite trustworthy sources as well, that he potentially doesn't try as hard as he should be, or he's not as disciplined as he should be as a professional footballer in training. Now, there's a certain level of that comes with people mature, and Alex Lowry's only a young guy, and like we said, I guess we said with Leon King, who struggled a bit when he came into the first team, but appears to be putting in every ounce of effort he can on the away from the pitch to be better. And we need Alex Lowry to take on that attitude as well, because he certainly has all the talent at his feet, and he could make a big impact for us. I think he can really be, and we'll come on to the third goal now because I'm going to bring in Malik Tillman. I thought Malik Tillman had a really good game tonight, Kyle. I thought he was really influential across the park, and he was key to most of our attacking play. You can still tell that he thinks 2 or 3 steps ahead of anyone else on the park, which I think can lead to some frustration for him at times, and it can also lead to some of his passes or some of his touches looking like they didn't go where they were supposed to go, but actually he's relying on other players to be there. So I think Malik Tillman is had another great game tonight, and he capped it off with a goal. What was the third goal of the night? Again, it was Kent onto Morelos, and then some more good work from Alfredo Morelos, who I thought was better in patches tonight than he was in the previous games, where he had a 10-15 minute spell and kind of disappeared. So I thought Alfredo Morelos was better tonight. He always scored with a bit of an audacious back heel after he outmuscled the defender. Whether he should have gone for the back heel or just gone for a more straight down the line shot, I guess that's up for debate. But I thought he did well at that point and set up Malik Tillman, who squared up to the defender and slotted the ball into the back of the net, scoring against Motherwell again. Rangers' third goal of the night, and pretty much securing the 3 points. It was another really good goal that was completely separate from how we were playing at that point in the game.
Yeah, totally agree with you there. It was a really good pick out from Morelos. He was unselfish in that moment. I think there would have been games in the past where he would have maybe been tempted to have a wee shot and goal there, but Malik Tillman makes a brilliant run, lets the ball run across his body, and it's a superb finish against a pretty decent goalkeeper, I would say. On Malik Tillman's performance and during the whole game tonight, he was the one player for me that actually got people off their feet at times. He had a wee nutmeg on the outside of the box. I'd love to see the amount of fouls that he got against them tonight, because he seemed to win us quite a lot of fouls in terms of when we were just looking for a wee rest, if you know what I mean, or just a wee chance to perhaps regroup. Some of his passing was really, really good at times. He's got that sort of, I don't know, sort of threading it through the eye of a needle. He's really good at breaking the lines. I agree with you in terms of that some of our players aren't quite up to anticipating where he's going to play the ball next yet, but yeah, it was another really all round good performance from Tillman, and I think he'll certainly be in the team coming for the Old Firm game. It would be crazy not to, and given as well that the fact that I know we'll come on to the raft of changes that happened, but obviously that wee injury to Morelos or tightness, things had to tweak. I think he played about 3 or 4 positions tonight, and I know that Beale was in the brief bit of his press conference that I did manage to catch. He did talk about, we are trying Malik in several different positions because we're not sure what it is yet. Is it an 8? Is it a 10? It's good for us to have a player of that quality that's that versatile. I think the seesaw of I was all, well, we should pay the 4 or 5 million to Bayern Munich straight away, and then I went to the total opposite end. Is this guy's 4 or 5 million for this guy? Absolute madness, and I'm now back again to thinking that 4 or 5 million is it's an absolute steal. I would pay that in January.
Yeah, Cubby Cubster comes in and says Tillman is a must sign, and I'd have to agree with that. I do think you give yourself, when it's an already pre-agreed amount to be paid in the summer, I think you give yourself as much time as possible to assess the player, and obviously to make sure that he doesn't get a serious injury between now and the end of the season and all of that sort of stuff, to make sure you're not wasting money. But I guess it would be Rangers' luck if we were to fork out the money just now and then get a serious injury. But touch wood that does not happen. But I think you definitely pay the money for Malik Tillman. I think with the pedigree of playing for Bayern Munich, it's a bit like Yanis Hadji. You're not going to lose out by forking out that money. There's always going to be someone that looks at his time at Bayern Munich and coming through that youth system, and will take a chance on him at a rate of £5 million, even if it wasn't to work out at Rangers. And Yanis Hadji falls into a very similar bucket in that I think there are quite a few teams across Europe that would willingly pay well over the £3.5 million we paid for Hadji to take him on.
I'm sure that Tillman deal's structured in that sort of typical Barcelona clause, in that Bayern Munich have got the option for first option for a buyback on him or something like that, I'm sure as well. So I'm not quite sure how that would work in terms of if we bought him and he had another really good season, what happens? Did Bayern Munich say we want him back again, but we're giving you 5 million, or I don't know how it works, but for me, he's definitely a guy that we should be signing, Tillman.
Yeah, absolutely. After the third goal, there was a raft of changes, as you said, Kyle. There were 4 changes, I believe, made, and I'm going to try and remember who came on and who went off the top of my head, but whether I can or not, I'm not entirely sure. So I think the players that came on, Fashion Sakala, Glenn Kamara, Adam Devine, and James Sands, I think were the 4 players that came on. 4 players that went off. This is going to be the harder part of it. 4 players that came off were John Lundstrom, James Tavernier came off. We thought he seemed to struggle a couple of times during the game, James Tavernier, especially going forward. There was one particular point in the second half where Ryan Kent was almost just holding the ball, waiting for the overlap, and James Tavernier was just not making it at all. And we thought that was a bit strange. But it seems to be that he's still struggling a bit with the flu that Michael Beale had mentioned previously, and he's missed quite a bit of training, and they were just wanted to try and give him as much rest as they could, with the game effectively done and dusted at 3-0. So James Tavernier came off. I've completely forgotten who else came off. Kyle, you may be able to fill us in on that one. But I did think that James Sands moving into that John Lundstrom position, as we discussed, was really interesting, and I thought he did well when he came on. But it did seem that the 4 changes, while I understand why they were made when they were made, we were 3-0 up, got a big game coming up on Monday. We're struggling already with injuries, and we're struggling already with injuries, and we need to wrap some players up in cotton wool, I guess. But it did take all momentum we had in the game, if we had any momentum, to be fair. It did take all of that out the game. We went back to being safe. We went back to being a bit sloppy. We went back to struggling to create a lot of chances. It seemed to effectively kill the game from at that point, which I was actually really disappointed in, because we need to start to have that attitude in that 2-0 or 3-0 isn't enough, and we need to keep going till the very end, and we need to do all we can to score as many goals as we can, because we know goal difference will continue to be a factor when it comes to up against the other side of the city.
Yeah, as you said, any momentum we did have, it just sort of killed it stone dead. In terms of the substitutions, if you remember at the game, I had no idea who was coming off or what. I was just shouting all sorts of names, but I was, in hindsight's a wonderful thing. I was genuinely surprised that Morelos wasn't one of those four, given that he's really the only fit striker that we've got at the minute, despite what Beale said about Cholak and dare I say it, Roof. For what it's worth, I actually thought, and I'm dying to see the comments after I've said this, I actually think that James Sands had not too bad a game playing in his natural position. He's always been a player that I rate. I think his game intelligence is quite high. I think he can read a game really well. And I think that he did what Michael Beale asked him to do in terms of go in there, be a bit disruptive in terms of breaking up the Motherwell play. But for me, his passing was good, and it was quick, and at times it got things moving. I know we'll come on to some of the other substitutions later on, but for me, out of the subs that came on, oddly enough, it was a defensive midfielder that sort of pleased me most. But then again, that sort of highlights the fact that we've brought on Jings Kamara and Fashion Zakala, and I understand that Divine came on for Tav, but you would still expect him to be pushing up. It just didn't really happen, and at that point I can maybe understand why Beale's done it. It's 3-0, just wants to see the game out and again just put some minutes and legs.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do agree with you that James Sands made the biggest impact of those substitutions. Alfredo Morelos obviously went down almost straight away as soon as play restarted. I believe it's a tight hamstring, Michael Beale said in his post-match interview, so they're going to monitor it over the next few days, but he didn't sound too worried about it at this stage. I think Alfredo Morelos will be a big player for us come Monday. We'll obviously have a full preview of the Rangers Celtic game later in the week. We're actually doing it on Friday morning at 10 a.m. So make sure to tune in at that point. I know it's a random time, but people are busy at this time of year, and we had to try and fit it in people's diaries. Anyway, Kyle, a couple of ones before we get your man of the match. Curry Muncher speaks about Ryan Kent. We know Ryan Kent has moved into a more of a free role since Michael Beale's come in, and he seems to be dropping a wee bit deeper at times and trying to link up the play, and some of his movement to get away from opposition players is really, really impressive. But also some of his, I guess he plays the safe pass quite a lot still. I don't think he quite drives it at defences as much as he did in previous seasons, but he's definitely making more of an impact than he was under Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, especially not being stuck hugging the left-hand touchline. What's your thoughts on Ryan Kent's performance tonight specifically, but also on the whole?
He's definitely getting better from what we've seen previously in the season. I think that's a fair comment from Curry Muncher there in terms of there wasn't an awful lot of end product, but as you said, getting away from opposition players, I mean, is there anybody better than it in this Rangers squad at the moment? I'm not too sure, but maybe it's just highlighted a wee bit more because it's just that the final decision making was my biggest criticism from Kent tonight. Again, at times you could really see what he was trying to do. That the instance you talked about where Tav, again, I just think sometimes the players round about him were letting him down, that some of the passing wasn't there. I think that's an ideal role for Kent, just being the sort of roamer and just being given that license to go over, to play wherever he wants and find that pass. I think that's where he can be most chaotic and most disruptive. But it's just, yeah, it's hopefully something we'll see going forward. How he got his sponsors man of the match of the game, I think everybody that was in Ibrox just went, huh? But like, yeah, how that happened, I do not know. Somebody obviously wanted a signed Ryan Kidd shirt or to talk to him for 5 minutes, but man of the match he was not. But you can see the gradual performances improving ever so slightly. Hopefully, when everybody else is a bit fitter and there's a bit more better decision making, hopefully that's when we can really see Kent sort of come into his own. But it's I'm conflicted at times because he is such an important player, but in what's the date today? 28. So in 3 days, he can sign pre-contracts with anybody that he wants. And I don't know if that's weighing on his mind at the moment or whatever. But from Kent, it certainly needs to be better. But you can see improvements from him.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree. You can see improvements from him. I think on his contract situation, it's going to be similar to Connor Goldson as was last season. I think it will run until the summer, and I think he's probably more likely to be offered a new contract than Alfredo Morelos. But Alfredo Morelos, I guess some would say his form is picking up in a timely manner, and it may prove that he is still an important part to Michael Beale's system, and that we may struggle to find a replacement. But I do think that these are definitely players that need to be taken into consideration when we're talking about a squad reshuffle, and as to whether they are still providing value to Rangers at this moment in time, or whether actually there are players out there that we feel could offer more to us as a team in this moment in time. I guess that's all to be discussed in the wash. But one player who, as soon as we came on tonight, Kyle, was instantly getting stick was Alfredo Morelos' replacement tonight in Rabi Matondo. There's a few comments here I want to pick out. I'll go with Albert's 11 legend first of all. Definitely not a fan of Rabi Matondo's performance tonight. Blue Nose 70 was another one. How poor a finisher is Matondo? Why does he never try to chip the goalkeeper? He's a player that's frustrating, Kyle, because you can see glimpses of his quality at times. You can see he knows what runs to make and when to make them. His finishing leaves a lot to be desired, I think, is the diplomatic way to say it. What were your thoughts on Rabi Matondo when he came on tonight, and do you kind of echo the frustrations that others felt?
Yeah, I totally agree with most of those comments there. It's really tough to say, but sometimes you've got to say it. He's just not of a Rangers standard. We've seen enough of him. He looked. I seem to vaguely remember him being a bit promising in that West Ham friendly we had at the start of the season. He had a good run against Hearts for when he set Cholak up. But other than that, I'm really, really struggling to find any moments this season where he's excited. He has pace, but to be a success in Scotland and at Rangers, you need more than just pace. I mean, that's the last couple of games he's had clear one-on-ones with the goalkeeper, and the finishing has been very bad for a professional football player. I mean, you would think that's total bread and butter stuff for guys like that, Matondo. I mean, you've seen the training sessions under Beale now. You see it. He is in positions like that a lot. He's against a better goalkeeper than Liam Kelly, I would say, in terms of when he's up in training against McLaughlin or McGregor or even McCrory to an extent. He should be doing better. I had massive questions over him when he came in. As soon as you saw that Schalke had signed him for 11 million quid from City's youth academy, and in the space of 18 months for Schalke to be willing to let him go for less than a third, almost a quarter of the price that they initially paid for him. I mean, that's serious question marks, and I think we're now seeing why Schalke let him go. I think Schalke have done well to recoup even 3 million quid back from at this point, but he's never worth that amount of money, and has got to go down as a massive black dot against Ross Wilson in terms of signing him. If I don't see the guy having a future at Rangers. I know that sounds very harsh, but I would much rather see one of our young B team players getting the nod ahead of him, to be honest with you, and especially in games like this. But he's a Rangers player, and I hope it does come good for him. I hope with some coaching under Beale, maybe it does improve, but that's just me being extremely optimistic. It needs to be better from Matondo, and I just don't see it happening, is the short answer there.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to agree with that. I'm always wary about judging players too quickly or too early, and I think I can only really recall one good game that Rabbi Matondo had for us, if I'm being honest, and that was at home to St Johnstone when he was playing on the left. I think he's played one more game on the left, as we've seen it so far, and other than that, he's been out on the right. He's been a bit part player. When he's started games, he's not really taking his chances, and I think he really needs to buck up his ideas quickly if he's going to have any future at Rangers. But to be honest, I think he's probably too far gone, and I think we can get players of better quality. But like you say, that's another black mark, I guess, against Ross Wilson's recruitment strategy. And while there have been some successes from a recruitment in previous years or in the last few years, there's been a lot of that have been failures, and I think £3 million on Rabbi Matondo is falling into that bracket very, very quickly. I see a lot of Ross Wilson comments coming in. Now, I'm not going to touch on Ross Wilson at this time. A transfer window is about to open. We'll have plenty of time to discuss Ross Wilson and Rangers transfer strategy as it is. Kyle, we've just hit the hour mark, so we'll start to wrap up now. The last question for you is on your man of the match. Who do you think was Rangers' best player tonight?
It's quite tough. This normally when I come away from a lot of games, I've got like a definite man of the match in my head, and I'm like, that's the guy I'm going to say who it is. For me, I don't think anybody particularly stood out tonight in the team, but it's a toss-up between Barisic for his 2 assists. I thought he was fairly comfortable at times, but I'm going to give it to Malik Tillman. I thought he took his goal really well. I thought he was key to most of the attacking play that we had. I just thought he was good, and he was the guy in the front of the programme today, and he lived up to his expectations, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you there. While Borna Barisic was influential in the result today, and his 2 crosses were absolutely fantastic, I think his defensive frailty still came through today, and I think for that reason Malik Tillman gets the man of the match for me as well. So let's hope Malik Tillman continues that form over the next few games. I think all that's left for us to do is to thank you very much, Kyle, for joining us tonight.
It's been a pleasure. I'm sick of you. Don't talk to me until the Old Firm game now.
That's fine. I might not even talk to you there either. So it's absolutely fine. And thank you very much to everyone for tuning in. Please remember to subscribe to the TII YouTube channel. Pop a like on the video if you've enjoyed our content. If you subscribe to the channel, you'll get an option to toggle on those notifications. If you toggle on those notifications, you'll get an email every single time we go live or we upload a new podcast, which is always great. In terms of what the schedule is coming up, as I mentioned a bit earlier, we've got our Old Firm preview podcast going live at 10 a.m. on Friday morning. So please do come join myself, Scott Cameron, and Shug to talk about all things Old Firm game for the 2nd of January. Outside of that, Kyle and myself are back after the Old Firm game for our immediate post-match reaction. Let's hope it's a celebratory one, and we can enjoy a long afternoon on the beers after that game. But I'm not sure how confident I am at this stage on that one. But as I said, thank you very much, everyone, for joining. And until next time, goodbye.